I caught my fiancée and her lover at Olive Garden. He said, she's just here for free breadsticks. I said, then don't choke on them. And their date ended with, I was supposed to work late that night. I'd been putting in long hours at the office for weeks, mostly to save for the wedding. Lydia had been distant lately, blaming stress from work and wedding planning. She said she needed a girls' night to unwind, so I thought I'd do something small and thoughtful. Drop by her favorite Olive Garden, pick up her favorite dessert to surprise her later. Simple, harmless. But when I pulled into the parking lot, I saw her car already there. She'd told me she was across town. My stomach tightened. Maybe she came here with her friends, I told myself. Maybe they changed plans. But something about the way her car was parked crooked, facing the street instead of the restaurant, made my skin prickle. Inside, the lighting was warm, the kind that makes every conversation feel private. A Friday night crowd filled the place. Families, couples, laughter echoing between booths. I scanned the tables, trying to spot Lydia's dark green dress, the one she wore whenever she wanted attention. And there she was, at a corner booth, laughing. But not with coworkers. Across from her sat Trevor Manning. I knew him. I'd introduced him to her months ago at a charity mixer. He worked in finance, sleek hair, the type who calls waiters buddy, but tips poorly. He was smiling, holding her hand across the table, thumb tracing her palm like he owned it. I stood there longer than I should have. People started noticing. Lydia looked up and froze mid-laugh. Her hand slipped from his. Trevor glanced over, clearly realizing who I was. The smirk that formed on his face felt rehearsed. He leaned back casually, reached for a breadstick, and said something loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. She's just here for the free breadsticks, man. That line, that smug grin, it detonated something inside me. I walked toward them, not fast, not shouting, just steady. Lydia's face drained of color as I stopped at the table. I didn't touch him, didn't even look at her. I looked at the breadbasket between them, still half full. I told him quietly, then don't choke on them. It wasn't loud, but people heard. Silence spread like a shockwave. Forks paused midair. Trevor smirked again, but it faltered when I leaned down and calmly took the napkin from the table, folded it, and placed it beside his plate. Lydia whispered something, but I ignored her. I turned to the waiter, a nervous kid barely 20, and handed him a $20 bill. Box this for me. I'll take their dinner to go. A few people laughed under their breath. Trevor's smirk vanished completely. Lydia's voice cracked as she tried to stop me, but I walked out before she could stand. I didn't look back. Outside, the cool air hit me like a slap. I sat in my car for a full minute, engine off, pulse steady. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked calm, too calm. Then my phone buzzed. Lydia's name. I declined the call. A second later, the restaurant door burst open. Lydia stumbled out, calling my name, heels clacking on the pavement. Her mascara streaked down her face. She reached the car, slammed her hand on the window, pleading for me to talk. I didn't roll it down. Then, in her panic, she dropped her purse. Lipstick, receipts, and a phone hit the asphalt. But it wasn't hers. The phone had a cracked corner and a lock screen showing a location pin pulsing red. It wasn't an ordinary GPS app. It looked like a live tracker. Trevor's phone. Before she could react, I picked it up and got in the car. I said nothing. She stood there, screaming something I didn't bother to make out as I drove off. A mile down the road, I parked under a streetlight and opened the phone. It wasn't password locked. Idiot must have disabled Face ID for convenience. Notifications flooded the screen. Messages, location alerts. One from a contact labeled M.R.2. It read, he won't find out. Tomorrow at the same place? My chest felt cold. There were other texts too, screenshots of receipts, addresses, one with a selfie of Lydia and Trevor inside a condo I'd never seen. I didn't go home. I drove to a gas station, sat under the buzzing lights, and started going through everything. The phone's gallery showed dozens of photos of Lydia, some from weeks ago, others from months back. The backgrounds didn't match her stories. Hotels, dinners, weekends she claimed she'd spent helping her mom. At one point, a text came in from Lydia. Please, come home. We can fix this. Another followed seconds later. It's not what you think. Then a voicemail, her sobbing, saying I'd misunderstood everything. But something else interrupted her drama. A new notification popped up on Trevor's phone from an unknown number. The message simply said, keep her quiet. The paperwork isn't ready. Paperwork? The word stuck with me. I took photos of everything, forwarded the screenshots to my own phone, and then powered his device off completely. I didn't know exactly what I was looking at yet, but my instincts screamed that whatever Lydia and Trevor were involved in went beyond an affair. By the time I got home, it was past midnight. The house felt wrong, too neat, too quiet. Lydia's things were still there. The framed engagement photo on the mantel looked staged now, like two strangers pretending to fit. I took off the ring she'd given me to match hers. A cheap silver band she insisted had sentimental value. It left a faint mark on my skin. The phone buzzed again, mine this time. Social media notifications poured in. Somehow, the Olive Garden scene had gone viral. Someone had filmed it. The video was everywhere. Me walking up, Trevor's breadstick comment, the moment I told him not to choke on them. Comments flooded under the video. This man just unlocked a new level of calm revenge. Dude handled that like a CEO firing 2 interns. I should have been embarrassed, but I wasn't. The irony burned deeper than any humiliation could. Lydia wanted drama. She got a headline. At 2 in the morning, I finally lay down on the couch. I didn't want to touch the bed. I kept thinking about that location pin still visible on Trevor's phone screen, the one labeled with an address in the next city over. Whatever was waiting there, I needed to see it for myself. Just before dawn, I texted my friend Miles, who worked in IT security. I told him I needed help accessing a phone. He didn't ask questions, just said to bring it by. As I stood by the window watching the sky lighten, I saw Lydia's car pull up outside. She sat there for nearly half an hour, lights off, probably hoping I'd come out. I didn't move. When she finally drove away, I noticed something small on the windshield, a single Olive Garden napkin, folded neatly under the wiper. It wasn't just guilt. It was mockery. By the time the sun rose, I'd already decided this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a reckoning. Tomorrow, I'd visit that address. And something told me the real story wasn't about breadsticks at all. The address on Trevor's phone led to a quiet complex about 30 minutes away, tucked behind a strip mall and a dry cleaner. It wasn't some shady motel. It was one of those modern places with clean white facades and balconies full of hanging plants. The kind of apartment that screamed new money. I parked a few buildings down and watched for a while. No movement. The blinds were drawn, but one light flickered inside. My name wasn't on the lease, but the key fob hanging from Trevor's car key in the photos matched the brand of the building's security system. I walked in behind a delivery driver, timing it perfectly, and took the stairs to the 3rd floor. Unit 312. I stood there for a moment before knocking. No answer. I tried the handle, unlocked. That alone said enough. I stepped inside quietly, shutting the door behind me. The air smelled like perfume and cologne mixed together, the kind that clings to fabric long after the bodies are gone. There were 2 wine glasses on the table, half empty, lipstick on one rim, a silk scarf draped over the couch, and framed photos on the counter. Lydia, smiling with Trevor, posing by a lake. In one of them, she wore the same green dress from the Olive Garden. For a second, I just stood there. It wasn't rage that hit me. It was the realization that everything I'd been planning with her, the wedding, the house, the savings, had been a script she'd already rewritten without me. I opened the drawers in the kitchen. Bills. Receipts. A folder labeled lease documents. The name on it, Lydia Bennett. Paid through an account I recognized, our joint savings. She'd been using my money to rent a love nest for months. In the bedroom, I found something worse. On the desk sat a small printer and a pile of fake invoices, her company's letterhead, fabricated charges, signatures that didn't match. She'd been embezzling funds through her job to cover expenses. Next to it, a photo album. I opened it and saw their timeline laid out like a scrapbook. Resort trips, dinners, weekends she'd claimed she'd spent with her mom. A picture of them at a resort 3 months before our engagement caught my eye. Her hand rested on his chest, same ring she'd later show off as my fiancé's gift. I took out my phone and recorded everything. Every page, every photo, every document. I wasn't planning revenge yet. I wanted facts. A noise startled me, a phone buzzing somewhere under the bed. I knelt and pulled it out. Trevor's second phone. This one had a passcode, but when I held it up, it unlocked with Face ID. Apparently, he'd forgotten to remove it from sync with the other device. There were dozens of messages between him and Lydia. And worse, one between them and someone labeled A. Collins. I opened it and froze. They were talking about me. Trevor had written, "He's the easiest mark I've seen. Docile. Predictable. Once she claims he's unstable, she'll walk out clean and split the savings." And Lydia had replied, "He'll believe it's his fault. He always does. We just need to stage one more fight." Stage one more fight. They were planning to provoke me, make me look violent or irrational, the perfect setup for her to walk away with everything. My hands trembled as I kept scrolling. They'd even discussed rehearsing her breakup speech so she could cry believably. I sat on the edge of their bed, trying to process the scale of it. It wasn't just infidelity. It was calculated betrayal. The sound of footsteps in the hallway snapped me out of it. I peeked through the peephole. A man in a maintenance uniform stopped at the door across the hall, knocking. Not my door, thankfully. Still, I decided it was time to leave. On the way out, I noticed a letter taped to the fridge. A notice from the leasing office, past due payment for next month. It wasn't much, but it gave me an idea. Back in my car, I called Miles. He picked up on the first ring. "You find what you needed?" I told him about the phone, the fake invoices, the messages. He whistled low. "You're sitting on evidence of fraud and conspiracy. Want me to back up the data before it disappears?" "Yeah, all of it." He met me at his office later that afternoon, and we spent 3 hours cloning the phones. Every file, every deleted message, every email Lydia thought she'd erased. We found her personal Gmail login buried in Trevor's contacts, where she'd sent herself scanned copies of falsified expense reports. Miles looked up from his screen. "You could end her career with this." I wasn't sure I wanted to end it. I wanted her to watch it collapse on its own. That night, Lydia called. I didn't answer. Then came a string of texts, guilt, denial, bargaining. "Please, Gavin." He meant nothing. It was a mistake. "Can we just talk?" "Talk." I replied with one word: tomorrow. The next day, she showed up at our house before noon. Her makeup was flawless, her tone soft, the perfect performance. She brought lunch, played calm, acted like the previous night hadn't happened. I let her talk, just watched. She smiled through lies like a professional, weaving half-truths about misunderstandings and emotional confusion. But her phone kept lighting up on the counter, Trevor's name appearing every few minutes before she flipped it face down. When she excused herself to the bathroom, I unlocked her phone using her face while she was distracted by the mirror. Miles had shown me how to access recent app activity. I opened her photo folder. There it was, a hidden album titled Backups. Inside were selfies with Trevor, timestamps matching days she told me she was working late. Some even taken from that same apartment. The final photo stopped me cold. A selfie of them holding champagne glasses, with a caption underneath. "New beginning. Goodbye, Mr. Predictable." My name wasn't even worth typing. She came back from the bathroom pretending to fix her hair, smiling like she hadn't left digital fingerprints everywhere. She sat down and reached across the table. I pulled my hand away. "I went by your office," I said. "Left something for HR." Her smile faltered. "What?" "Those invoices. The ones with your signature." She froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. The color drained from her face as her phone buzzed again. "Trevor." This time, she didn't pick it up. I stood, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. As I opened it, I noticed a car pulling into the driveway. It wasn't Trevor's. A woman stepped out, sharp red hair, determined expression. She looked at me, then at Lydia through the window. "Is that her?" the woman asked. I nodded. "Good. My name's Vanessa Manning," she said, her voice flat. "We need to talk." I didn't know it then, but Vanessa's arrival was about to turn everything upside down. Because Lydia wasn't Trevor's only secret, and Vanessa wasn't here just to confront her. She'd come armed with something that would burn them both to the ground. Vanessa didn't waste time. She walked straight past me into the living room, her heels clicking like punctuation. Lydia was still sitting there, staring at her untouched plate. When she saw Vanessa, she went rigid. Neither woman spoke for several seconds. Then Vanessa crossed her arms and said evenly, "So, this is where my husband spends our savings." Lydia tried to stand, but her knees buckled slightly. Vanessa raised a hand. "Save it. I've seen the receipts. I've seen the pictures. I just came to make sure Gavin here knows what kind of performance you've been running." I didn't say a word. I let Vanessa talk. Her calmness was almost surgical. She explained how she'd been tracking Trevor's spending for months, suspecting something. It wasn't until she saw a video titled Olive Garden Drama, Man Catches Cheating Fiancée, trending on TikTok that she realized the woman in the clip was the same one her husband had been lying about mentoring. Lydia's composure cracked completely. She went from defiant to trembling in seconds. Vanessa looked at me. "I have an attorney. You probably do too. Maybe we should coordinate." We did. That night, we sat in Vanessa's car outside a coffee shop, sharing information like two people comparing crime scene notes. I showed her screenshots from Trevor's phone. She showed me emails where he had been falsifying client invoices, same technique Lydia used. Together, we began to connect the dots. Trevor and Lydia weren't just having an affair. They'd been helping each other funnel money through both of their companies, using dummy invoices and fake vendor accounts. It was a small-scale fraud operation hidden behind the facade of romance. Vanessa smiled grimly. "He always said she was a good business partner. I just didn't realize he meant that literally." That's when the idea hit me, not to destroy them emotionally, but professionally. Public humiliation was one thing. Legal exposure was permanent. Over the next few days, Vanessa and I formed a quiet alliance. She provided the documents proving Trevor's misappropriation of funds. I handed over Lydia's fabricated invoices and messages. Together, we built a case strong enough to trigger investigations in both workplaces. But we didn't send it yet. We wanted to watch it unfold. Lydia tried to contact me daily. Calls, emails, Apologies wrapped in manipulation. When she realized I wasn't answering, she left a letter on my porch, promising she'd cut things off with Trevor and begging me to help her get through the HR mess. That line, help her get through the HR mess, gave me my opening. I texted her back, let's meet with HR together. We can fix this. She replied almost instantly. Yes, thank you. Where? I suggested Olive Garden. The same one. Same table if possible. Meanwhile, Vanessa reached out to a contact she knew, a licensed private investigator named Robson who occasionally worked for corporate clients. We briefed him on everything, and he agreed to join the meeting under the guise of HR representative. Vanessa and I would sit nearby, playing casual diners. The day of the setup, I arrived early. The manager recognized me from the viral video and nervously offered a quiet corner booth. Perfect. I told him I was expecting a small business mediation. 15 minutes later, Lydia arrived in a pale coat, hair tied neatly, makeup soft, trying to look fragile. She smiled when she saw me, though her eyes flicked nervously toward every table. When Robson entered, she assumed he was HR, especially when he introduced himself formally and placed a folder on the table. Ms. Bennett, he said, thank you for coming. We've been asked to review some internal reports and would like to clarify your involvement. Lydia nodded, visibly relieved. Of course. I just want to clear my name. Robson slid the folder toward her. Inside were copies of the fake invoices, her signature, and cross-reference statements linking her to Trevor's financial records. At first, she tried to fake confusion. I don't know what this is. Then Robson interrupted. Mrs. Manning, would you like to join us? Lydia froze as Vanessa approached from the next booth, calm and composed, holding her phone up like evidence in court. The color drained from Lydia's face when she saw who was standing behind her. But that wasn't the worst part, because Trevor himself walked in seconds later. Vanessa had texted him earlier that morning, pretending to be Lydia, saying, meet me at Olive Garden. Emergency. When he saw us all gathered, his face tightened. What the hell is this? Robson remained professional. Mr. Manning, I believe you'll want to sit down. There are questions about several accounts tied to both of you. Trevor's expression hardened. Lydia turned to him, whispering something desperate, but he ignored her. Then, for the first time, I spoke. You said she was just here for free breadsticks, I told him. Guess you were both eating more than that. He lunged halfway across the table before Robson's arm blocked him. The commotion drew attention immediately. Chairs scraped, servers stopped mid-step. Trevor shouted that this was a setup. Lydia screamed at me for ruining her life, and Vanessa calmly began filming. Within minutes, the manager called the police. When officers arrived, Trevor was still shouting, Lydia sobbing, and the folder of documents open on the table like a confession. It didn't take long for things to escalate further. Trevor shoved one of the officers in panic. They cuffed him on the spot for assault and obstruction. Lydia tried to follow him, but they held her back for questioning. As the chaos unfolded, I stood up, left a 50 on the table, and nodded at the waiter. For the inconvenience. Outside, cameras were already rolling. Someone had recognized me from the first Olive Garden video. The footage would later trend again. Olive Garden Scandal 2.0, people called it. Vanessa walked beside me, silent, but there was satisfaction in her posture. Later that evening, we sent the compiled evidence to both companies' compliance departments and local investigators. The corporate fraud unit moved fast. Trevor's accounts were frozen within 48 hours. Lydia's employer placed her on immediate leave pending investigation. The best part was watching their own arrogance collapse them. Trevor's wife had outsmarted him. His mark had turned out to be the trap. A week later, I got a call from Vanessa. It's over, she said. Both suspended. HR confirmed Lydia's under formal review for embezzlement. Trevor's being investigated by the finance board. You're free. Free. That word felt strange. But the real closure came 2 nights later when Olive Garden invited me back. Apparently their PR team wanted to offer me a year of free meals to turn bad press into humor. I went, more out of irony than appetite. Halfway through dinner, Vanessa texted me a photo of Trevor being escorted out of a courthouse in handcuffs. She captioned it, "Guess he finally choked." I couldn't help it. I laughed. It wasn't over yet, but the story had already flipped. The people who tried to make me look weak were unraveling in public. They'd written the first act. I was writing the last one. 2 weeks after the Olive Garden meltdown, my phone buzzed constantly with updates I hadn't asked for. News sites picked it up under headlines like "Corporate Couple Exposed in Public Restaurant Scandal." Videos of the arrest kept resurfacing with new captions. People turned the footage into memes. The internet had turned their downfall into entertainment. I didn't feel triumphant, just still. By the 3rd week, the investigations were official. Lydia's company suspended her indefinitely after finding irregular payments linked to fake vendors. Trevor's firm publicly announced his termination and cooperation with financial authorities. Vanessa's attorney filed for divorce, attaching the videos and documents as exhibits. It wasn't just public humiliation, it was legal destruction. I avoided watching the videos, but my coworkers sent them anyway. "Dude, you're a legend," one text read. "You took revenge like a chess player." Another wrote, "You should monetize this. Tell your story." I didn't want to. Not yet. Instead, I focused on clearing my name from anything tied to their mess. I closed our joint bank accounts, canceled the wedding venue, and spoke with my lawyer cousin, Erica, to ensure Lydia couldn't claim emotional damages or any of my assets. When the dust began to settle, I moved out of the house we'd shared. I didn't want to sleep in a place where every wall remembered her. I found a small apartment near the river, old, quiet, anonymous. A few days later, Vanessa reached out again. She wanted to meet, not to talk about legal stuff, but to share something she'd discovered. We met at a small cafe downtown, both of us careful not to mention the chaos that had started at Olive Garden. She placed a folder on the table. "You should see this," she said. Inside were Trevor's financial records, offshore transfers, hidden accounts, even one under Lydia's maiden name. He'd been using her not just as a lover, but as a front. She hadn't even realized how deep she was. He thought she was helping him, Vanessa said. But she was his decoy. I stared at the numbers, the fake vendors, the wire transfers. Lydia had walked straight into the trap she'd helped design. "Any idea what happens to them now?" I asked. Vanessa shrugged. "He's facing charges for corporate fraud and obstruction. She's under investigation for complicity. They're both done." A strange calm filled me. The woman who once mocked me for being too careful was now drowning in the very chaos she'd created. That night, I opened a blank document on my laptop and began typing everything that had happened. I didn't plan to publish it. I just wanted to understand it. Writing it out was like breathing after holding my breath for weeks. 3 months later, I received a call from Olive Garden's regional manager. He wanted to extend a formal apology for the incidents and invited me to a reopening event. I almost declined, until he mentioned Lydia had contacted them too, claiming she wanted to make peace. That curiosity I'd buried came back. I told him I'd attend. The night of the reopening, the restaurant looked new. Fresh paint, polished tables, soft lighting. It didn't feel like the same place that had witnessed everything. I sat at a corner booth alone, nursing a glass of wine, half expecting her not to show. But she did. Lydia walked in wearing a plain coat, hair loose, face pale from exhaustion. She looked smaller, thinner, eyes hollowed out by sleeplessness. For the first time, she didn't look manipulative. She looked lost. She spotted me, hesitated, then walked over. "Gavin," she said softly. "Can we talk?" I gestured to the seat. She sat down, clutching her purse like it held her life inside it. "I know you don't owe me anything," she began, "but I needed you to hear it from me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Trevor said he'd handle everything. I was stupid." Her voice cracked. I watched her talk, about how she lost her job, how her parents refused to speak to her, how she'd had to sell her car to pay her lawyer. She said Trevor had turned on her, claiming she'd forged everything herself. It was poetic justice, but hearing it didn't feel satisfying. It just felt inevitable. "I wanted to see you one last time," she said. "To tell you I understand now what I threw away." I nodded, expression neutral. "I don't hate you," I told her. "But you built this. Every lie, every secret apartment, every invoice. You wanted freedom. Now you have it." She looked at me, eyes wet. "I just wish we could go back." Before I could answer, a familiar voice came from behind me. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was hell." Vanessa stood there, smiling politely, holding a takeout bag. She slid into the seat beside me, completely calm. Lydia's face twisted when she saw her. Why is she here?" I looked at Lydia. "Because she ordered the breadsticks." Lydia blinked, speechless. Vanessa placed the bag on the table and pulled out a small box. Inside was a folded Olive Garden napkin, the same one Lydia had left on my windshield that night months ago. Only this time, someone had written on it, "Bon appetit." Lydia stared at it, confused, then realized it was my handwriting. She pressed her lips together, stood abruptly, and left without another word. The restaurant fell silent again for a few seconds, like déjà vu. When she was gone, Vanessa exhaled and laughed quietly. "That felt too poetic." "Closure usually does," I said. We sat there a while longer, talking about ordinary things. Work, travel, anything except the past. There was no grand declaration, no cinematic reconciliation. Just two people who'd walked through the same wreckage and decided not to rebuild the ruins. When I finally left that night, I looked back once. Lydia was outside on the sidewalk, arguing with someone on her phone. Probably her lawyer, maybe her parents. It didn't matter. I walked to my car, the same one from that first night, and noticed something taped to the windshield, another napkin. But this one wasn't from her. It was a promotional coupon. Free breadsticks for life, Olive Garden thanks you. I laughed under my breath. The universe had a sense of humor. Weeks later, I got the final piece of closure. A letter from Erica confirming Lydia's charges: embezzlement, falsifying records, and aiding fraud. Probation, fines, reputation gone. Trevor's case was worse. 18 months in prison. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be cruel. It just needs to be irreversible. I kept one thing from that whole ordeal: the original receipt from that first night at Olive Garden. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, and the breadsticks that started everything. People online still tag me in videos about it, calling me the calmest man in the world. I don't respond. Because the truth is, calm doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from watching chaos destroy itself while you stand outside, untouched. And every time I pass that restaurant now, the neon sign feels like a quiet joke between me and fate. Because in the end, he did choke on the breadsticks.